talking about. So in terms of fasting, I guess firstly we've got to consider like what actually is fasting and why bother even doing it. Like the different types there are, because there's so many, it's a bit of a minefield, right? So, even when I speak to people, they're like, what's the 5-2, right? So someone else like 16-8, right? Well, it means fasting for the day. It could be like Ramadan. It could be just not eating. It could be 800 calories, 600 calories. It's the diabetes diet. Everyone has so many different perceptions, right? And I think this is an important thing to consider when it comes to fasting. So, and then how to make fasting work for you and a sample plan for fasting that you'll get after. So in terms of fasting, why bother doing it? Well, there's claims about aging, there's claims about weight loss. And we're going to be going over both of these tonight, okay, to make sure that we go through the research and what it's looking at. So let's start with aging well, right? So any anti-aging protocol, if you like, we're looking to increase the health span, years to our lives, reduce morbidity and morbidity, the quality of life, all of these things. So it's important to get this right, because I could say like aging, anti-aging, and I could say take this, we could finish it now and go, yeah, fast, because autophagy, you might have heard of that, like getting rid of dysfunctional cells, regenerating, getting rid of the ones you don't need, it's cleansing, and you might go, yeah, that sounds all good, man. And it's shown to help rodents live longer, but then actually when you extrapolate that to human beings, it's like you're doing all that and you're going to live 3 weeks longer, and it's like, oh, okay, so it's not as maybe as significant as we thought, maybe. So it is associated with reduction in muscle mass and strength, immune dysfunction, and increased risk of certain cancers. So again, you've got some interesting potential contradiction in there as well. And in terms of that, so dementia, the leading cause of death in order, overtaking cardiovascular disease. So these are just already like things that we need to be aware of in terms of aging, like more so than just weight loss or anything like that. We know that we are potentially, the quality of life for sure is definitely among people's minds right now. We've got aging population as well. So let's go into fasting. So types of fasting. So you've got intermittent fasting, which a lot of people talk about a lot. So you've got maybe 2 days fasting per week, where you've got calorie intake around maybe 500 to 700 calories, and you've got the other 5 days being normal eating. And ideally, you'd actually want these to be in a calorie deficit. So say a deficit for you was 1,300 calories, you'd be like 1,300 calories, and then 2 days, 500 to 700 calories. You've then got time restricted feeding, or time restricted eating. So this is like that feeding window. So like I said, with 16-8, it might be 16 hours of fasting. So for example, if you went to bed, if you had your last meal at say 8 p.m, then you would eat then 16 hours later, which is midday the next day. So therefore then you've got that 16 hours of that window. No, 2 p.m. that would be, wouldn't it? 2 p.m. you'd eat the next day. Then you eat for 8 hours again, and then you go again. That can be 6. It could be less than that. And actually, some people will find that they're actually doing time restricted eating without knowing. Right? They're actually doing time restricted eating without even knowing. And then you've got the fasting mimicking diet. So the fasting mimicking diet, 30 to 50% of your normal calorie intake. Okay, so you do this 4 to 7 consecutive days, and then you have a refeeding window, and you might do this every month. So like you might just hit like 4 to 7 days, real low, like halving your calorie intake. And the cool thing about this, by fasting mimicking, you get that period of time where, one, you create that calorie deficit. It might be a bit of a reset. It might help with your hunger, because we know that from calorie restriction that actually you can train your hunger a little bit with this, okay? So you might actually find that actually it's it helps you actually feel what hunger actually is again, right? Because often we forget. We're always snacking and scared to get hungry. You've then got alternate day fasting. There's lots of studies on this. So you've got 1 day of fasting, 1 day of eating. And the fast is actually a full fast, like just water. So you would fast from your last meal the next day, the evening, and the day after. That's why I put 36 hours, because actually, like, say you have your last meal now at 8 p.m, you wouldn't actually eat until Saturday morning. Okay, so you would eat Saturday, and then you wouldn't eat until Monday. So it's like the Saturday evening, Sunday you fast, and then you would eat on Monday. And again, that's another option. Then you've got the good old 5-2, which is essentially intermittent fasting. But I'm just putting that 5-2 because people use them interchangeably, use them differently. So this is that, like kind of Michael Mosley, 5 days calorie restriction, 1,300 calories, say if that was a calorie deficit for you, and then 2 days of 500 calories, 600 calories, 700, 800 calories. So let's have a look at the research on here. So there does seem to be, a lot of people say when they fast or they go into a calorie deficit, they feel better, they have more energy. Anyone ever said that before? But for me, I have more energy actually when I fast. And one of the things is the metabolic shift from glucose to ketones. Now, you've then got potential that actually the calorie restriction here, the fasting, means that you're in a calorie deficit, that you lose fat over time. You then feel better from that as well, because if you're lighter, everything is easier, your walking's easier, your running's easier, etc., which is a good thing, right? So longevity then as well. If you think about longevity here, and when it comes to fasting, if we are then losing body fat, you could be reducing your risk of certain diseases at the same time. And this brings one of the questions on in terms of, is it actually fasting or is it actually the calorie restriction, right? And that in itself is an interesting one to consider. So in terms of fasting on there, so this is just one thing already to think about when it comes to longevity, and this is that mechanism. So I like this because it kind of sums up here in terms of what happens when you fast for 10 to 14 hours. So let's see what actually happens. So your liver glycogen starts to deplete, and you start to break down triglycerides, essentially fat, to free fatty acids. So these free fatty acids are then in circulation to liver cells, where they produce ketones. And in terms of ketones, you then have potential that ketosis, which people talk about. So you have reduction in glucose and amino acids during fasting, and then you get that autophagy. And you might have heard of autophagy before, right? Is it anyone heard of that before, autophagy? And this is thrown around like it's like you want autophagy, you need this autophagy. And the thing is, this down regulates a pathway which is associated with aging well. So this is where it gets contradictory, which is the mTOR pathway, which is important for muscle building and muscle protein synthesis. And I'm sharing this because quite often when you look online, you'll see people out there and they'll just start talking about autophagy, fasting is this, but actually then it depends on the person, right? It's not as black and white as sometimes they make out, because actually if preserving muscle, building muscle is something that's really important to you right now, well, maybe we need to just be wary of a few things when doing this in terms of fasting for too long. But if fat loss is the main goal here, you could probably get a good combination here. And I'm sharing this from a very balanced perspective. Like personally, I actually like fasting. I do it a lot. I've talked about this a lot when I was studying at Loughborough and Oxford Brookes. I would be in the labs all day. I'd drive to Swindon, go for get a bus to Oxford, be in a lab all day, study, can't eat, and I wouldn't eat, just have coffee basically. And then on my way back at about 3 p.m, I'd have my main meal, like a big salad, whatever meal I've got, lots of veggies, lots of fibre, lots of protein to break the fast. Then I'd personal train till later, then I'd have another meal at like 8, 9 p.m. of basically whatever I wanted because I had the calories. Got in great shape doing that. It was hard in the mornings, don't get me wrong, but actually it allowed me that flexibility to get in great shape, to control my calories whilst getting stuff done. And I felt good, if I'm honest. And I still do similar now, so I can eat with the kids in the evening, and be quite flexible with that. So, autophagy, so cleaning out the damaged cells, if you like, reusing old ones, removing dysfunctional. And these are like metabolic pathways which are associated with anti-aging, which is why you hear so much in terms of that means you'll live longer. And actually, there's still many questions, like just because autophagy seems to be happening, does it actually mean that you live longer, that you have better quality of life? That's the questions that were still there. So what are the impacts on this? So a lot of this research is on monkeys and rodents. So there's obviously a bit of questions around that. So you've got DNA repair, reduced inflammation, antioxidants. You've got an increased lifespan in rats by 14 to 45%. In mice, 4 to 27%. Can you see the range? It's such a range. And this is why, when we look at like cancer studies and chemotherapy and fasting, it seems that fasting may improve it sometimes, but not all the time. And that's why, how the message is delivered is really important. It's not like, imagine saying, if you would be fasting, it should be working better. That's just not true. You don't know that for sure. But this is kind of the fasting mimicking diet. So that kind of 4 to 7 days consecutive. So this is 2 times 4 days of fasting mimicking per month. So that's that 50% reduction in calories. So they did that 2 times 4 days per month. So they had 4 days, then another 4 days at another point where they'd 50% reduce their calories. And this returned white blood cell numbers back to levels seen in youth. So quite interesting. But again, this isn't a human study, if you like. And in here, so mice following this, 50% less tumours later in life and they're more likely to be benign in nature. So interesting. So again, the same study showed that fasting mimicking diet, so 2 times 4 days a month, this is 8 days overall of halving your calories essentially, in combination with chemotherapy, is as effective as short-term starvation in reducing tumour progression. So the reason fasting mimicking diet is put out there, because there's often an interest in what's the minimum I have to do to get the benefits of fasting. So rather than just not eat for a month, and just starve, they see similar benefit with just 2 times 4 days of 50% reduction in calories, which is cool. And it just shows again that actually you could argue here that there's benefits in actually not being on it all the time. We often think we have to be on it all the time, but actually, if you think about people who say, yo-yo diet, I'm on it, I'm off it, okay. Actually, this is essentially yo-yo dieting a little bit. And they could be increasing their lifespan. There you go. But of course, this is in rodents. You have to take it what it is. So let's look at humans then. What's the human? So a 5-day fasting mimicking diet here, and on average, so 6.3 times over the duration of the study, once per month, every 3 weeks. Okay, so about 3-week cycles, they would do the 5-day 50% reduction. They had reduced in fat mass, which is obviously good, reduction in insulin production, reduction in inflammatory markers, and obviously muscle is quite key as well. So does that real range from calorie restriction? Not really. And I think that's an important thing to consider. So will fasting make you live forever? That's the question. So the problem is with a lot of these studies, there's lots of variables. Like they sometimes look at like other communities and what's important here. Well, look at like religion and stuff like that. They fast and they had long quality of life and stuff like that. And actually, you got to consider also what they eat, right? Like what they eat is quite important. You look at like Um, Maybe you could look at like Italian parts of Italy, the blue zones, and look at communities like they do Ramadan, where they do fasting there. Look at the celebration of food that they're like, it's a big deal. And that, the family coming together, is also real good for people's mental health, right, as well. And that could be playing a role in their longevity and happiness in there as well. But then it's also the type of food, right? So if you're breaking your fast with, I don't know, Cheerios and crisps, chocolate, it's probably not going to be as effective if you're breaking your fast with a big salad, lots of protein. It's going to help your hunger hormones. And I always say this, but if you're doing fasting, don't just wing it. Make sure your first meal that you break your fast with is planned. High protein, high fiber. It's going to keep you fuller for longer. It's going to get the hunger hormones straight in with that, which is important to be full, satisfied. And then you can use that evening meal to maybe be a bit more flexible with your family, kids, evening when maybe you sit down. You then got to consider exercise, right? Like the question, I don't know if this has been done, but I'd love to do some research in this. It's a burning question. If I do my PhD, it'll be in this, I think. I've got lots of ideas actually, but yeah. Looking at, does fasting without exercise have any extra benefit than versus fasting with weight training, fasting with resistance, fasting with cardio, fasting with a mixture? And what I mean is exercise will obviously accelerate the fasting, right? So you could fast for 24 hours, but you were quite sedentary, versus fasting for 16 hours, but you did exercise. Because obviously exercise is going to start using glucose as energy. Your body might call upon ketones energy if you're really pushing it. So therefore, have you just sped up and got all the benefits without having to fast for a long period of time? Can you get similar by eating fats and protein and not carbs? Does that provide like a ketogenic diet? These are questions that I think would be quite useful, because if there is some benefit in there, then that could be interesting to look at. But we can be guilty sometimes of, and I'm sharing this because I want you to be critical as well when someone just says, you should do this, you should do it like this. Like, if someone's doing 16-8, like, are they actually fasting for 16 hours if they're eating all this good fiber, protein, which might take a while to digest? So it could be in your digestive system for like 4 hours on. Really, you're still actually digesting food, right? The fiber, large intestine, you got a bit of gas, your body's actually fermenting the food, So, and then is it just the calorie restriction, which is the key thing? And that's okay, don't have a problem with that. But is it actually fasting, or is it just fasting is a useful way for you to hit your calories? Like, and then back to autophagy, will it actually make me live longer? And I think this is a good summary here in terms of fasting for weight loss. Like, is it actually the fasting, or is it the calorie deficit? And it comes back to the principle of every diet: Atkins, Cambridge diet, low carb, keto, Weight Watchers, Slimming World, you name it, calorie counting. Really, it comes down to, if it sticks to the principle of achieving a calorie deficit, it's probably going to work. So, in terms of cardiometabolic health, just some studies kind of showing here that 11.9% was observed. Adaptations in blood pressure, cholesterol, fatty acids, even when controlling for weight. So that's quite interesting in terms of calorie restriction alone. So what I mean by this is whether you fast or just simply calorie restrict, there's benefits. So to sum up on here, and I'm going to share a few resources after this. Fasting is a tool to help calorie controlling. It's also quite useful in terms of sticking to it, right? Because I was finding not eating is sometimes easier than planning, making choices, right? Like if you've got to eat 6 meals a day, you might be like, oh, so it's a full-time job planning meal. I think that's why I don't really eat much in the day, because it means less planning. At best, I'm eating eggs and mackerel, right? I'm lazy. Or maybe some bit of cheese. And omelette at best. But that gives me flexibility for the evening. Like, what do I eat tonight? camembert tonight. Yesterday, duck and pancakes. I like to sit down, eat, and that process of sitting down and eating with the family, catching up, it's a nice thing to do. Even just sitting down at the dinner table, it makes it more event. Even if I'm on my own, actually, in the evening, I just like to just sit down and actually eat a good meal. And yeah, if that helps you stick to it, great. And remember, like, you can get benefits from not doing it every day. Fasting mimicking diet, right? And I think there's promising research in all of this, and I think it's key to remember that. And I think one of the things I'll always take home is, should you fast? Well, if fasting helps you eat less during the day and your goal is fat loss, fasting is probably a good thing for you. If fasting makes you eat more, then fasting is probably not a good thing for you. So I'm going to leave you with a few resources now. And there's one, a fasting sample meal plan with a lunch and a dinner, which I'll share now. I'll just share my screen with you now. 1 second. I'll just get this up so you can see this. If anyone can't see it, let me know. If you want to see it, just send me a message, it's fine. So I'll share this with you now, so you should be able to see this. So this is a little sample quick fix here. So like for your fasting days, little ideas here. It could be that you have a meal maker template. So it could be like in the evening, you have a bit more flexibility. In the day, just to simplify it, maybe you go for a protein shake, 2 scoops of whey protein, handful of berries, bit of good fats in there, all good to go. And then you've also got, I can send you a sample meal plan. Nothing crazy, just with what it could look like, right? So I'm always big on breaking your fast with protein and veggies. I think it's really important to do, however that is, whatever suits you with that. So yeah, I hope that helps. Any questions? Any questions on this? Let me just have a look. 1 sec. Any questions on fasting? Anything you want to go through? Anything? Who does fasting? If you do fast, let me know. Do you like fasting? Does it work for you? I think this is an important thing to discuss on. So I'm going to just put this in here. 1 second, and then, yeah, got it. Okay, so that is all the everything I had planned for today. Anything else that you want to go through? Any questions at all?
Matt, I think I'd like to give it a go.
Yeah.
But I think I'd need to do it during the day and then fast from, say, 7 o'clock in the evening till 7 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to try it and see how I get on with it.
So 7 till 7, did you say?
Yeah, so that'd be what, 12, wouldn't it? So.
Perfect. Great. Good. So I would start with that, like, and even if that stops potential snacking on an evening, right? That's a good thing. So.
The only thing I do find is that I'm sleepy in the afternoon, so I think I need to cut back on what I have at lunchtime.
Okay. So what could you go for?
Well, I was thinking something like yogurt and fruit, or even a bit of hummus and some vegetables, that type of thing. Snacky, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah. Yogurt and fruit, vegetables, all good?
Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds good. Yeah, let me know how you get on with that.
Okay, great.
And then we'll go from there. All sounds good?
Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, no, fasting is interesting, and it's definitely a tool in the toolbox that I think more of us should use for sure. Brilliant.
Thanks.
Cool. Awesome. Well, any questions, let me know. Have a lovely evening, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
See you, Teresa. Take care. Simon, are you British? Yes, indeed. I am. Hi Lacey, how you doing? Hope you are all good. Hope that was helpful. If you watched on replay as well, do let me know. If you have any questions, as always, do let me know. And I will let you watch the replay if you want to. Does anyone do fasting, by the way? Does anyone practice fasting? Let me know, by the way, in the comments, if you do. It'd be useful to know. And if you've got any questions, do let me know. As always, I'll be back in every day with a video that hopefully helps. And we are good to go. For me, morning for me is my fasting time. I like to eat in the evening. Anyway, have a good evening. Any questions, let me know. And I will see you later.